What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So the Star Wars Outlaws situation has not gone well for Ubisoft pretty much since seemingly they announced it, but it appears things have actually gotten worse leading up to release tomorrow as a certain bug calls into question the entire idea of this early access stuff, and we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about a game from the 90s that we've joked about getting a remaster, but now it's actually happening, and in fact, the original studio behind it that was shut down is even getting revived. Then also we're going to be taking an extended look at Clair Obscur Expedition 33 with some new gameplay, and I gotta tell you, this might be one of the big games to keep an eye on going into 2025. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton, and if new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below, and of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you'd like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're going to start today with Emio the Smiling Man. It is out today, and reviews did go live yesterday, which we can see over on Metacritic, currently sitting at a score of 78. Now that's on 37 reviews at this time, and it appears it is skewing positive, but we do also have 8 mixed reviews. And what's funny about this, and I kind of figured this is how it would go, if you're a longtime fan of the Famicom Detective Club series, which is really just the two, I guess, from the Famicom that have recently been redone for the Switch, you're going to get a kick out of this game. In fact, Nintendo Insider even said they lost sleep over this game, giving it seemingly a perfect 100, whereas on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have like VGC, for example, giving it a 60, Eurogamer giving it a 60, and they're mostly pointing to the story not clicking with them or the game itself, I guess, being repetitive. I kind of look at it more as a visual novel, and I guess there are interactive sections to it, but it didn't really do anything brand new necessarily to take the franchise to the next level. But that's kind of what I would have expected going into it. It would have been set up for people who enjoyed those other 2 titles to maybe get something brand new here, with Nintendo even going mature rated with it. But if you're already looking at it, you probably know what you're getting into. Again, it is available today. Also, we once again have Konami wanting to announce Metal Gear Solid 4 going to other platforms, but not able to announce that Metal Gear Solid 4 is going to other platforms. This time we can see over on IGN. They say, now in a recent interview with IGN, to discuss the upcoming Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, Konami producer Noriaki Okamura teased Volume 2 and its inclusion of Metal Gear Solid 4. Asked directly about bringing MGS4 to modern consoles, they said, we definitely are aware of this situation with MGS4. Unfortunately, we can't really say too much at the moment with Volume 1 containing MGS1 through 3, ... You can probably connect the dots. There were 3 dots there, let's see, and then you add another one. Wait a minute. 4 comes after 3. Yeah, they want to tell people so bad, hey, look, right now, we're working on it. Like, it's going to happen. Metal Gear Solid 4 is going to be in the next collection. They're just not ready to announce it yet because they want you to be looking at Delta, not at Collection Volume 2 that maybe comes out at the end of next year. They have to sell Delta. And there would be a lot of excitement and interest in Metal Gear Solid 4 finally going to other platforms, because Metal Gear Solid 3, I mean, we've had that on their platforms already, and this now being a remake of that game. But still, Delta looks awesome, and yes, there will be a ton of excitement whenever Metal Gear Solid 4 finally gets announced for something other than the PS3. Oh, and we did have some unfortunate news on Yakuza Kiwami, of course, going to the Switch. We can see over their official account, where they say it's releasing October 24th at a price of $19.99, and it appears to be digital only, so we're not getting a physical version of the game. I think $20 is about right for Kiwami at this point, with this really, I think, being a way for them to kind of test the waters with the Switch audience. We'll also see how performances and everything on the system, of course, in handheld mode being one that I'm very interested in to see how it holds up there. But I was thinking maybe we could import the game. It doesn't seem to be the case there either, where sometimes like just Asia will get a physical version, and of course the Switch being region free, if it has an English option, yeah, just grab that one. But no, it looks like they're strictly sticking to the eShop, at least for this release. I do think we will see more Yakuza games or Like a Dragon games come over for the next generation system, and this might just be a way for Sega and RGG to introduce the Switch audience, especially if they're not at all familiar with Yakuza or Like a Dragon, to the franchise. So here's hoping we get physical copies next time. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Star Wars Outlaws, which is out tomorrow. But if you pay extra money, I believe it was about $110 total, you were able to get in earlier this week, I believe on Monday. Now, reviewers were able to check it out even before that, of course, so they could go through the game and drop their review scores. And the reviews on this have kind of been all over the place on a wide spectrum, but it is sort of sitting in the mediocre range, and there are definitely many issues with the AI, things that I ran into even in the first hour of playing the game. And fortunately, I've only played an hour of the game because Black Myth Wukong has sucked up so much of my time, which I'm actually at the end of that game, and maybe I'll make a video on my overall thoughts of that game after roughly 40 or so hours of it. But I was going to go back to Star Wars Outlaws, and it looks like it was a good thing I waited because, well, if you're on the PS5 like I am, and you've been playing it in early access, you might have to actually delete your save data and restart your entire game based on a patch and bugs that were fixed. We can see this is actually posted up. This is over on Eurogamer, where they did have the email that was sent out by Ubisoft specifically to PlayStation 5 owners saying, to best experience the Outer Rim, we rolled out a maintenance to make sure everyone is playing the latest version of the game. It appeared this patch was over 8 gigabytes in size, so it's not like a small, quick, like hot fix or something. It was quite sizable. Say, as one of the players affected who had access to an older version of the game, we are aware you might be encountering some issues after this recent patch. We sincerely apologize for any inconvenience this may have caused. Now, Ubisoft asked those affected players to start a new save to fully enjoy Star Wars Outlaws as our team intended. It noted that if players continue to play on an earlier save file, they will unfortunately face issues and progression blockers. So over on Reddit, there was also a part that was pulled from that email because, of course, Ubisoft wants to make it up to people who maybe spent 10, 15 hours playing the game after spending $110 on that game, who then have to restart. They say, to make your return to the Outer Rim a little more special, we are granting you an in-game Trailblazer trinket as well as 100 Ubisoft Connect units to redeem for in-game rewards. For example, I have no idea what that actually gets you. If anyone is aware of what these Connect units get you, or if 100's good or not, I'm honestly not sure. I'm kind of picturing that as, I don't know, $10 or something. Let me know down in the comments. But yeah, it's a trinket. So there you go. You can, the Trailblazer trinket, I guess, is good enough for that. My thing with this is, yes, it's only PlayStation 5 owners at this time that we're understanding, and I do question if everybody has to delete their save data, although if you're like 8 hours in right now and you're hearing that and you go, well, what if I play another 5 on this current save file and then I get stuck? There's a game-breaking bug that just blocks progression, as they're kind of mentioning here. It would probably make sense just to delete your save data and restart, as annoying as that is, because technically then you beta tested the thing in early access that you spent extra money for, and now you're going to reset back to 0 and be where everyone else is when the game comes out tomorrow. Hey, you might get a couple of hours head start on everyone. Yeah, that's what I mean by this whole situation, is it defeats the purpose of this early access stuff, which, let's all face it, we know typically early access means that's when the game could have come out, but they're pushing it back a few days so they can also charge money based on FOMO, seeing other people playing the game, and you want to jump in right then and there. But when things like these happen, it does, of course, bring up the question of, should I actually buy in early because maybe I really like this franchise or I really want to play the game, or do I wait? Because at this point, the obvious advice is, well, you wait, since who knows, this could happen to the next game they do early access for, and you have to just delete and restart your game, and there was literally no point. You're just kind of out the extra, what, $40 or so. Yeah, unfortunate stuff here for PlayStation 5 owners who may have been several hours in the Star Wars Outlaws. Fortunately, I'm mostly just going to be deleting about an hour's worth of time, which really was kind of the tutorial and just sort of a set piece to get you used to some of the extra pieces when it comes to sneaking around and stuff. Again, I have an entire video showing that, but yeah, I guess I'll be going to this after Black Myth Wukong, but who knows, maybe I'll just beeline it right to Astrobot, since that's not too much further away. Next up, let's talk about a game from the 90s that I didn't think we would ever actually see get remastered. We joked about it a lot, and now it looks like it's actually happening, and the studio behind it is coming back. Now, we can see this posted up over on Gamatsu, and I'll admit, when I saw this show up on the timeline, I had to do a double take to make sure I wasn't hallucinating or something. We can see it here. Croc Legend of the Gobos Remastered announced for consoles, PC, alongside Argonaut Games Revival. What? It says it's also due out in 2024, so it's releasing, I guess, in the next 2 or 3 months. You feel like you wouldn't release it in the end of December if you can help it. But what? Okay, so Croc came out back in 1997, all right, and Argonaut worked on it, of course. They developed it, and they had previously done work on things like Star Fox. The Stunt Racer effects, I believe. They were doing a lot of the really cool graphical showcases for the Super Nintendo back then. They even worked on Star Fox 2 that went unreleased until officially, quote unquote, until the Super Nintendo Classic. But they're coming back now. They have Croc coming back as a remaster for PC and all these other consoles, and I was just blown away when I saw this because it's absolutely hilarious that this is an actual timeline we all exist in. Anyway, we have several quotes here for the press release. This from Argonaut Games co-CEO Gary Scheinwald, who says, "I worked closely with Jez on the design and production of Starglider, Argonaut's first big hit in 1986, so to take up the mantle of relaunching Argonaut Games nearly 4 decades later brings me full circle, and we have further exciting announcements in the pipeline in the coming months." This quote's from co-CEO Mike Arkin, says, "Wanted to honor the original game's legacy while introducing it to a new audience. The HD remaster allows us to do just that. It's been a labor of love for our team, and we can't wait to share it with players on all the current consoles and PC later this year." So I will tell you this, Croc was definitely a product of its time. That was when 3D platformers were all over the place, and we had Croc, and then so it was on the PlayStation 1. And then I also tried to play it on PC. This is really funny. Back then, we had the family computer, and it wasn't a great PC then, and we got a better PC later on, but I tried getting Croc to work on it, and there were no textures. It barely functioned. It was a whole thing. But later on, I was able to get it work on the better PC we got. But I just remember that because then my friend had it on the PS1, and I checked it out there, and it was really, really cool. Again, product of its time, I feel like in the 90s. I don't know how well it's going to translate over now, as they mentioned, multiple decades later. But they're going to take a shot at it, and it's definitely at least a piece of history, is what I'll say. But I am curious with them coming back and them also tapping some of their older titles. Things get very interesting here for Argonaut, depending on how they go. I don't know if we'll see a brand new Croc game, but let me know if you're someone who was familiar with it, because that's actually our poll question later on. Next up, let's talk about Clair Obscur Expedition 33, as just over 6 minutes of just unaltered gameplay was shown. And guys, this game is looking very, very impressive. Let's take a look at some of the gameplay here as I go over a few of the details. I went through the trailer and just tried to pick a few things out here to point out. Now, first off, visually, it looks impressive. It's kind of this mature looking fantasy style, and it does remind me more and more as I was looking at it as maybe a newer age Lost Odyssey title. And this is the Flying Waters demo, so you can sort of see why that name is there as the characters are walking through this land. There's just bits and pieces of water, floating puddles kind of around them. The camera is close to the character while you are traversing around this part of the world. It's sort of over the shoulder, how we've seen more and more in terms of action adventure games recently. And it does have this transition from field to combat, then back to the field when the battle ends. So it isn't that situation of you find something on the field, the camera is always on the character and swinging around. There's a legitimate transition, which I like that because it does call back still to the older turn-based RPGs where you'd run around, find a monster on the map, and then maybe the glass will break for the screen and it flies off to the side. Thinking of Final Fantasy X for that one. But then if you have a final strike in battle, it has this nice freeze frame to it for the results screen to see your experience and items. And you do have a lot of those button presses, sort of that reaction-based combat as you're doing different attacks, and it looks like you're pressing buttons multiple times, maybe almost in a combo. You do have parry and dodge. Those are actually shown on the left of the screen. So it looks like you can choose which one maybe to use at any given time with those buttons. So I almost wonder if maybe some bosses, it makes more sense to parry or maybe some to dodge, because they do have a stagger meter, it looks like, under their health. So maybe you can build that up over time, knock it down, and then do big time damage. You also have the turn order on the top left of the screen, so you can sort of plan your moves out that way. And it's extremely stylish. That's That's really the best way I can describe it. And we have very stylish turn-based RPGs like Persona. This one just taking on more of a realistic tone, I guess. And best part again, for Xbox Game Pass subscribers, it is going into the service day one next year. And as I mentioned, this is certainly the game to keep an eye on here. Ever since we saw it a few months ago, it's really impressed me. And I've been waiting for just a nice clip of gameplay like this, where they don't even have voiceover or not trying to navigate around. They just legitimately showed off the game, and it's standing on its own. People are really happy with what they're seeing, and I do like the idea of more and more studios, rather than trying to get away from turn-based and say, well, everybody just wants action games now with the newer generation, maybe work to make the turn-based combat maybe more exciting, more modernized, have different takes on it, get creative, like we're seeing here with Expedition 33, because I think that is probably the best way to continue along with turn-based combat style. I understand things have to evolve over time, but rather than just try to push it to the back, maybe try to work on it so you can bring the best version of turn-based RPGs to the front for the newer generation. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a story now surrounding Bungie, which, I mean, they just cannot get out of their own way, it seems. It's just been bad news, whether it's layoffs or just issues internally, and now we're even seeing just misconduct being reported here out of Bloomberg. We can see this by Jason Schreier, who says, in March, top Bungie employee and former Marathon director Chris Barrett suddenly left the company. Barrett was fired after an HR investigation found that he had behaved inappropriately with at least 8 female employees. He goes on to say, speaking to Bloomberg, multiple women who reported Barrett said he would text them frequently, make suggestive comments, and ask to play truth or dare. What? The women said his advances were unwanted and that they felt uncomfortable because he was significantly more powerful at Bungie. This is in a statement to Bloomberg from Barrett saying, I never understood my communications to be unwanted, and I would have never thought they could possibly have made anyone feel uncomfortable. Now, just to sort of get the timeline here, this would have happened last year, actually, when another person took over for Marathon. So that's the other thing here is it's just internally at Bungie, it just feels like such a mess currently. Like, it's all over the place, and you see stuff like this, you're like, what is actually going on inside of Bungie? And then you hear about, of course, the situation around Marathon, where people seem very unsure. For example, Tom Henderson says, Marathon is so cooked, not just this, but everything I've heard. And yeah, I mean, Marathon just does not seem to be something that is starting off on a great foot. We've already talked about that before, everything going on with Destiny 2 right now, where that was going through all kinds of struggles internally, and all this now with Marathon right there at the forefront. Sony, I'm understanding as we get more and more information as to why Sony is pretty much taking over Bungie, as we are hearing from different reports, especially with even just management issues like this. It's just, what is the future for Bungie hold at this point? Because it seems like some of the stuff that they're at least trying to do with Destiny 2 isn't necessarily working to put them in the black. And then we see there just seems to be issues internally with some of the management there. And like, how deep does this really go? Because then you start to question, once again, Sony's purchase of Bungie. But yeah, I'll have this link down below with Jason Schreier's entire report from Bloomberg. And before we go to the comments of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, have you ever played any of the Croc games? 75% say no, 25% say yes. Adam asked, the shoe brand has a game. That's actually what I was figuring somebody would comment. Others were like, hey, Croc 1 and Croc 2 were awesome games. And that was kind of it. I do wonder how many people had experience with Croc on the Game Boy. That was kind of a lesser known version of the game, as most people think back on just like the 3D Croc games, like on like the PlayStation, for example. But still, it is interesting to see this make a return or a comeback here. I don't know how, I guess, big of a pull it's going to have necessarily, as again, product of its time. Don't know how well it will have aged, but with the remaster, it seems like they're going to do some modernizing of the controls, which, yeah, it definitely needs that one, but maybe it comes out and it's a big meme game, or people just really excited about it, and it does well enough for them to maybe explore more with the Croc franchise. It at least seems that maybe Croc 2 would be coming up, and then who knows, could we be in a timeline where a Croc 3 also happens? That'd be something to see. And we'll finish up with the comments of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Dr. Villain, who says, people keep talking about the PS5 Pro is coming while the base system keeps jumping in price. That Pro model is about to be $700+. I've seen people theorize that the current PS5 is going to drop in price when the Pro comes out in just a couple of months, and no, I don't think so. I think the PS5 is at this $450 to $500 mark for the long haul. Like, we might be year 7 by the time the thing drops, and that sounds crazy, but I mean, we're just in some very strange times right now with gaming, especially with the console market and sort of the pricing and the regional differences and currency. It's a whole mess out there right now. But I do want people to realize, as you're mentioning your $700+ for the Pro, I think it's going to be $600 bare minimum. I wouldn't be shocked though if Sony fudges the numbers a bit and they go, okay, it's $650, but it doesn't come with a disk drive. You can buy the disk drive separately if you want to use physical media, but that'll be another $80, which means the PS5 Pro with a disk drive like I would want it would be $730, and that would make that $600 price reveal that they had with the PS3 seem like nothing. But I guess technically you get a couple of extra jobs for the PS5 Pro and be able to afford that $700+ price tag. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we've talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll have it linked up here for you in the cards. Or maybe you're curious what Super Mario Maker would look like running on an actual Nintendo 64. I'll have that below it. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.